Hello, and welcome to UnKpopular Opinions, a safe space for fans of BTS and other K-pop groups to ask the tough question, what do I think of this? I'm your host, Ginger Nuna, and today I'm going to share my initial reaction to ENHYPEN's new album, Border Carnival. I started this podcast by sharing my UnKpopular opinions about the debut albums from BTS, Tomorrow by Together, and ENHYPEN. My biggest supporter during this whole adventure has been my best friend Sam. When I found myself falling down the BTS rabbit hole, I grabbed her hand and pulled her down with me. She is privy to all of my UnKpopular opinions, not just the ones that make it onto the podcast. After she listened to the episode about ENHYPEN's Border Day 1, she texted me and said, "I loved this episode, but that's not the reaction you had." Then she produced Receipts, a series of animojis where I proclaimed to like 10 months and the changes made to Flickr. Initially, I was horrified by this revelation. How could I have forgotten my gut reaction? Then I realized, as I've mentioned before, your feelings about art can evolve over time. How I felt when I first heard the album in November wasn't how I felt when I recorded the podcast in January. This brings us to today's episode. Without seeing any teasers or promos other than still photos, I listened to Border Carnival and recorded my reaction. Now, I'm putting it on the internet for all to hear. Then, sometime in the future, after listening to the album more times than is healthy, I'll share those UnKpopular opinions. Will I still have the same favorite song? Only time will tell. But for now, settle in and enjoy my initial reaction to ENHYPEN's Border Carnival. It is 7:26 on April 26th, 2021, and I'm getting ready to listen to ENHYPEN's Border Carnival for the first time. And I'm recording this in my car, so if there are any weird noises, that is why. All right, intro, the invitation. I really liked how it picked up where the outro from the last album left off. I think that was really clever, and it makes a lot of sense. If you listen to, I think it's UnKpopular Opinions episode 3, that's the episode where I talk about ENHYPEN's debut album. And I mentioned that I really wish that they had switched the sounds for the intro and the outro on that album. And now listening to this and listening to the continuation of the Border series, it makes a lot more sense to me why they kept things the way that they did. I think the thing that jumped out at me was the reverb that they were using over the narration. I'll be honest, sometimes I have a hard time understanding what Jake is saying, and having that reverb really didn't help. I was not 100% certain all the time what was being said, so I don't know if I really love that choice. Also, it sounded like the chorus was, "Feel like I'm paradise." I think that's really interesting. It's like, so are they feeling like they themselves are paradise? Just to give you a heads up, I'm doing this first listening only to the music. I'm not looking at any of the lyrics. So I have no idea if that's actually what they're saying. And in another episode, I might be like, well, you definitely heard that wrong. So we'll find out. But anyway, let's move on and listen to track 2. I just finished listening to Drunk-Dazed. That is the title track off of this album, and I really liked it. I feel like, based on the concept photos, the 3 different sets, the up, down, and hype that was released for the album, you could tell that even though there was a bit of a darker edge to ENHYPEN at their debut, they were really leaning into it this time. I haven't heard any of the previews for this album, like I mentioned before, and so I'm not sure if there will be any lighter songs on the album, but based solely on the concept photos and this introduction, I would be really surprised if we found something on Border Carnival that was in line with 10 months, because that was a very light, eggy song on the last album. I really like this one. I am excited to watch the music video. I decided to wait to watch the music video after I listened to the entire album. So we'll see what kind of things they came up with for the music video, but it was really dark. It was really bass heavy. I really liked it. It's going to be one of those songs that I add to my Pump Myself Up playlist. So I think this was a really good start for this album. All right, let's see what happens next. Before we move on to the next track, which I think is Fever, I did want to point out that another thing I really liked about Drunk-Dazed was that it was a type of song that I haven't heard before from the big hit Big Three. I want to call them that forever, even though they are now the Hybe Big Three, but that doesn't sound nearly as cool. Anyway, I think a big part of that is that with this album, based off of what I saw from the writing credits, this album really splinters away from the big hit staff. There are a few that overlap between Big Hit, but this time B-Lift really relied heavily on Wonder Kid, who was the producer in Island. And so it makes sense that he was involved now because this is his baby and he is in charge of all of this. But anyway, I just thought it was really cool how that song sounded completely different. And I was trying to match it up in my head. Is there a BTS song that's similar to this? Is there a Tomorrow by Together song that's similar to this? And I couldn't. And I think that's really awesome because as we talked about in the first 3 episodes of the podcast, there are going to be inevitable comparisons between the 3 groups just because of the overlap and the fact that they came from the same company. And this was a really cool branching out and a way of ENHYPEN saying, hey, guess what? We are our own brand. So kudos to Wonder Kid and I think Cash Cow. They produced this. Super good. Nice work, guys. Track 3, Fever. Wow. I would describe this song as the love child of Let Me In and Flicker because holy crap. Wow. That is a sexy song. I'm a little bit at a loss for words. I was really just completely thrown at the beginning. And I'm really curious to see during their debut stage when they perform this, what kind of choreography they're going to use. I will say the song itself, after it had the initial shock that I felt, it's really repetitive. It doesn't change. There's no aha or moment of surprise. But I mean, it's a solid song. The vocals are great. I think anybody could listen to this song and be like, huh, well, I'm feeling things now. So yeah, I'm going to stop babbling and move on to the next track because Fever was Fever. Track 4, Not For Sale. Initially, as soon as it started, I had a minor panic attack because it's very, very similar to the opening for 10 Months. And if you've listened to the previous episodes, you know how I feel about 10 Months. And I was thinking, oh gosh, no, please don't be more Eggyo. But it wasn't. It was related to 10 Months in some ways, but it was a lot smoother. And what I really liked about the song was that this is the third song because I don't count the intro as a song. You're not going to be singing that in your car. This is the third song on the album, and so far all 3 songs have been very different. So the range that they are showing on this album is awesome. And it's really commendable, especially for a second album. This is really good so far. All right, I am curious to hear what's next. Next is the last song on the album, Mixed Up. So let's take a listen. Okay, Mixed Up is my favorite. Mixed Up is easily my favorite song on this album. And if they're going to do a live action music video for a B-side, I really hope it's this one. This was a good way to end this album. I know there's still the outro, but it was a really good bookend musically for the 4 musical tracks on the album. I love this album so much more than Border Day 1. This is really, really good. I think in terms of which songs I enjoyed most in what order, I would say I really like Mixed Up the most. My gut reaction right now is my second choice is Fever, then Drunk-Dazed, then Not For Sale. But it's all really close. It's not like Border Day 1 where I had clear favorites and ones that I'm like, I really don't know if I'm going to listen to this again or very often. I'm really excited to listen to this album in its entirety today on repeat at work and see if my feelings change. But before I can do that, I've got to listen to this outro. So listeners, this is where I made a very big mistake. At some point between recording my initial reaction and getting home to add the beginning and the end of this episode, I managed to delete my reaction to Outro the Wormhole. So I wanted to be completely honest about that, since the sound quality is very different right now than how it was before when I was recording in my car. And I wanted to let you know how I felt about that song. I really liked Outro the Wormhole. It got me excited for whatever Border Part 3 is going to be. I think it might be something having to do, it was very celestial sounding, so maybe something with space, based on what Jake was saying, maybe something involving alternate universes. I think it would be really cool if there was this whole alternate universe version of ENHYPEN and somehow they meet this universe's version of ENHYPEN. That's kind of what I was getting from the description of looking in the mirror and seeing yourself, but it's someone else. And that also really fits up well with the concept photos. I can't remember if it's the up or the down concept, where the pictures looked really cool when I first saw them. They're looking down in a mirror and they see their reflection. And I just thought, okay, those are cool pictures. But based on this outro, I think it's probably a little more telling about what is next to come for ENHYPEN. Listeners, what do you think is going to happen next for ENHYPEN? Do you agree with the alternate universe theory, or do you think something else will happen on the next Border album? Send your UnKpopular opinions to unkpopularopinionspod@gmail.com. Be sure to subscribe on whatever platform you're enjoying this on to make sure you're one of the first to know when a new episode is released. Thanks so much for listening, and don't forget to keep questioning.